Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever in the world you are. Tonight, I would like to deal with the subject of the GNU. The primary purpose of the 2008 to 2013 Government of National Unity in Zimbabwe was to implement the democratic reforms. These were the reforms that were designed to stop Zanu PF, Zanu PF rigging the elections and having a repeat of what happened in the 2008 elections, where the regime blatantly cheated and used wanton violence to win those elections. It has become a stuff of legend. Why? In 5 years of the GNU, not even one meaningful democratic reform was implemented. There are three main reasons why not even one meaningful reform was implemented. Number one, Mugabe managed to bribe Tsvangirai and his MDC friends. There's no doubt that he pampered them with the trappings of high office, the ministerial limousines, very generous salaries and allowances, and for Tsvangirai, the US $4 million mansion. The second reason is that our MDC friends were breathtakingly incompetent. The third reason is that MDC supporters, as well as the Zimbabwean public, were incredibly naive and gullible, because they didn't even realize that the primary purpose of the GNU was to implement reforms. And so they never put Tsvangirai and his friends under pressure. But I would like to revert back to the second reason, MDC leaders themselves being incredibly, breathtakingly incompetent. It is a stuff of legend. MDC leaders constituted the over 100 MPs, if we include MDCT plus MDC Nube or Mtambara at the time, when they signed the GNU in 2008, plus all the senators. There were over 40 of those. And then you've got to count the ministers and deputy ministers, and there were nearly 30 of those from MDC alone. And then there was the two deputy prime ministers, which is Dr. Kupe and Atham Tambara, Professor Atham Tambara. And then there was, of course, the Prime Minister, Tsvangirai himself. So in terms of members of parliament and senators, MDC had the majority. And in terms of ministers, MDC had the majority in cabinet. And it only required one minister or senator or member of parliament to propose the democratic reforms. And again, I emphasize, this was the primary purpose of the Government of National Unity of 2008 to 2013. And yet not even one MP submitted a reform proposal. Not even one in 5 years. That is unbelievable. How did he do it? How did Mugabe do it? That has become a stuff of legend. History will note the breathtakingly incompetence of the MDC leaders. He managed to convince the MDC leaders that they did not need reforms. They could win the elections and power without reforms. That's all he did. This reminds me a movie, The Wizard of Oz. I think many people out there would remember it. And this is the scene in that movie that I would like you to focus on.
What do you think you're doing?
We've been walking a long ways, and I was hungry, and... Did you say something?
She was hungry.
She was hungry.
Well, how would you like to have someone come along and pick something off of you?
Oh, dear. I keep forgetting I'm not in Kansas.
Come along, Dorothy. You don't want any of those apples.
Are you hinting my apples on what they ought to be?
Oh, no. It's just that she doesn't like little green worms.
Oh, you.
I'll show you how to get apples.
All right. I guess that did it. Help yourself.
There we have it. A simple, almost childlike trick. What Robert Mugabe did was to tell his MDC friends that they didn't need reforms. They were so popular. They could win the elections in Zimbabwe without implementing even one token reform. And the truth is, Mugabe, Tsvangirai and company believed it. They did not implement even one democratic reform because they were convinced they will win the elections anyway without any reforms. And some of us would remember their rallies in 2013, just before the 2013 elections, where Tsvangirai's rallies was a sea of red. The color of the party at that time was red. And everybody was convinced there's no way MDC would lose those elections. And that is what persuaded Mugabe, Tsvangirai and company to forget about reforms. The truth of the matter is the reforms were important in getting the country out of the situation where anyone could rig the elections. Even if MDC had managed to win the 2013 elections, that was irrelevant. The most important thing is to implement the reforms so that there is no chance in future ever again anyone being able to rig the elections. But they were too incompetent to appreciate that. All they wanted was power. All they were convinced of is that they would win it without reforms. And so the country lost this golden opportunity. It was, without doubt, the country's best get out of jail card. If MDC and friends had implemented the reforms, Zimbabwe would not be where it is today. What they didn't also appreciate is that Zanu PF's ability to rig those elections was such that they would win them. And when you look at a situation where the Zanu PF had the ability to control the election officials,